Buenas and Afade. Good evening. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts is hereby called to order at 5:38 Chamorro Standard Time. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on October 25th, 2023, with the second notice provided on October 30th, 2023. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website and on the Government of Guam Public Notices portal. This evening, the committee will hear and accept testimony on Bill number 181-37 COR, which is an act to add a new Article 4 to Chapter 77, Title 10, Guam Code annotated relative to allowing the use of body-worn cameras by uniformed officers of the Guam Police Department. I introduce this measure along with my co-sponsor, Senator Telo Taitague, who joins us now. Good evening, Senator. Senator William Parkinson, Senator Quinata, Senator Dueñas, Senator Joseph Agustin, Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Dwayne Nicolas, Senator Tom Fisher, and Vice Speaker Tina Muña Barnes. After hearing Bill 181-37, we'll take a brief recess before we reconvene to conduct our monthly oversight hearing on the Guam Department of Education. And again, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Senator Telo Taitague. It's been a long day at the legislature. I'm not sure who else is going to come, but you're good company, Senator. I'd now like to go over general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. The chairperson of the committee may order the removal from a hearing any member of the legislator in Guam who fails to observe proper decorum pursuant to the 37th Guam Legislature's standing rules. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing by the host. And we'll now begin with the public hearing on Bill number 181-37 COR, which again is the allows the use of body-worn cameras by uniformed officers of the Guam Police Department. And again, I've decided to introduce this bill and seek the co-sponsorships of my colleagues after meeting with Guam Police Department Chief Steve Ignacio, who had informed me that the department had availed of a federal grant that would allow for the purchase of the body-worn cameras, and that he was well underway as far as instituting that program, and that there had also already been a body-worn camera policy developed by the Guam Police Department, which is great news. That means we're a lot farther along than we initially thought, and so of course, very grateful for the co-sponsorship of my colleagues, and even more grateful for the support of the Guam Police Department, and very eager to hear the testimony. As I'm sure you guys know, the use of body-worn cameras is increasing throughout police jurisdictions across the continental United States. And so, as I've heard from many constituents and even many law enforcement officers, that it's a measure and a practice that is long overdue. And so we'll now hear testimony. We do have, of course, the Chief of Police. Also like to welcome all the Guam Police Department family that are here today. And thank you for coming, Guam Police Department Chief Stephen Ignacio. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Senator Barnett. Good evening, Senator Chris Barnett, Chair for Public Safety, and Senator Telo Taitague. If I may, sir, I'd like to read into the record our written testimony.
Thank you, Chief.
Written testimony reference to Bill number 181-37. Dear Senator Barnett, buenas and afade. The Guam Police Department hereby submits its testimony in favor of Bill 181-37, an act to add Article 4, Chapter 77, allowing for the use of body-worn cameras by the Guam Police Department. Bill 181-37 allows for the Guam Police Department to create and adopt rules and regulations for the use of body-worn cameras. Pursuant to Chapter 77-107A, the Guam Police Department has an established policy for body-worn cameras in General Order 700-60. The General Order spells out the responsibilities of the department and the responsibilities of the officers, provide general guidelines on when to activate and deactivate the cameras, and general restrictions on recordings and when appropriate. The General Order also spells out who has access to and when access is permissible to recorded videos. General Order 700-60 also provides for details of the limitations when recorded videos can be released and to whom it can be released to. In review of Bill 181-37 under 77404C, I recommend adding that release for use in criminal investigations and criminal prosecutions in accordance with the rules of discovery. Although I am not an attorney, in my experience having recorded interviews and interrogations of these recordings must be made available as part of the discovery process. Also in 77404, if not pursuant to 77404C and rules of discovery, there are instances when release should not be made public. For example, encounters with juveniles, encounters with domestic family violence or sexual assault victims, and recordings when there is a reasonable expectation of privacy, such as in homes of citizens, unless the presence of the officer or officers is lawful. Currently, although the Guam Police Department has a general order which guides their officers on the use of body-worn cameras, it does not have any department-owned body-worn cameras, and any endeavor would be a pilot program. In reading some guidance from the ACLU and the Department of Justice, I find that we will need to make more additional revisions based on the literature. Finally, our general order calls for storage in DVR or CD media. But after some discussions with OTEC staff, Mr. Frank Lawn in particular, the recommended storage is a combination of both hard drive and cloud storage. OTEC also talked about the need for additional personnel to properly manage this program to achieve maximum efficiency. At this time, the department issued an RFP for body-worn cameras using funding from a federal grant with a matching requirement from the Guam Police Department. There is $200,000 allocated for the program. An RFP was issued in FY 2023, but we await the outcome from GSA on the status of this RFP. I would like to thank the author and sponsors of Bill 181-37, and we look forward to working with your office to make amendments if necessary for the eventual passage of this bill.
Thank you very much, Chief, for your insightful testimony. And yes, you did raise some great points on your recommendation that we'll be sure to take back to the committee after the hearing. I'd like to defer to Senator Taitague if she has any questions, and then we'll close if there's no further testimony. Senator Taitague?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chief. Thank you so much for coming down here. You know, there's another bill that's out too that I proffered to allow you to use other type of security cameras, or just not security cameras, but just cameras within the precinct to be able to use it. And I'm glad that it's specified here pretty much, you know, the do's and don'ts of how to use it and when it can be used. But it didn't say anything here on, wait, let me see. I think it has, so when you dispose of any recordings, right, it's 90 days, it says here?
No, so if you look at some of the literature from the ACLU and also from the Department of Justice, the COPS program, and I provided a 78-page document.
Okay.
Generally, what I'm reading is they're recommending to keep the recordings for a maximum of 3 years, especially if it involves a criminal investigation or a criminal case. And that usually is also in line with the highest degree felonies, which are usually 3 years for statute of limitation. Maybe the exception to that would be our criminal sexual conduct cases and our murder cases, or the criminal homicide cases where there is no statute of limitation.
What about using the cameras for, like, you know, simple interviews when people come into the precinct? If an officer is there, he has his camera, and would he be able to utilize that? And
we can, again, but in reading some of the guidance and the literature, if we're interviewing witnesses or victims or even suspects, they would have to be advised that they are being recorded, and then two, they'd have to consent to the recording.
Okay.
And so in going down the line with your proffer to have these surveillance systems in the precinct, I think one of the things that we're going to have to meet that requirement is making sure that we post signs in our facilities
that they're being
that warn people that they are being recorded at all times.
Recording. Yeah, even during interviews and stuff. So,
absolutely, especially and especially during interviews.
Yeah. So when that happens, that would cover also body cameras, right? I mean.
Yes, and so
Okay.
that's the
If
thing with
those
body
warning
cams is
signs,
that
yeah.
If for some reason we're not at that point yet where we have surveillance systems in the precinct,
Okay.
we can use the body cams can double as that recording device. Absolutely.
And this legislation will not do any harm in getting federal funds, right? It's not going to
No,
have an issue?
no,
Okay,
it doesn't
so-
provide any funding, so we're not
okay.
supplanting anything.
So it's okay, right?
Right,
Yeah, that's what my
absolutely.
concern was. And thank you, Senator Barnett, for the opportunity. Yeah, and then to be a co-sponsor of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitague, for allowing me to be a co-sponsor of your legislation as well. Chief, have you, with the rank and file in the Guam Police Department, would you say they generally support the use of body-worn cameras?
Yeah, I believe that there's support for the body-worn cameras. And if you look at some of the literature again, in the Department of Justice report, some of the highlights, report a decrease in the number of citizens' complaints against the officers and a decrease in officer misconduct. In one department, it was noted to have decreased by as much as 75%. Yeah, so there is a value and an advantage to the community, not only to the police department, but to the community as well, in having body-worn cameras recording the activities of the officers and their encounters with their citizens. Yeah, so, and that's why I wholeheartedly support this bill.
Thank you, Chief. So you would say that the use of body-worn cameras benefits both the public and the police?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this benefit is not just to the officers. This benefit, provides accountability for just not only the police department and its employees and its officers, but also for our citizens as well. It decreases the likelihood of a negative encounter.
Yeah, I don't know if this is related, but I noticed, when we're in session, when we go into recess, the damn camera stays on. So knowing I'm on camera, I'm always trying to sit up straight. So
Make sure you
I'm
don't have
assuming it's kind of the same
Right, yeah.
principle, right?
Yeah, and in talking to OTEC, of course, we cannot have these cameras on 12 hours a day during the whole shift. That's why there are guidelines as to when to activate, when to deactivate.
Can you provide any more information on OTEC and what they had said? Because in your testimony, it said that they talked about the need for additional personnel to properly manage the program to achieve maximum efficiency.
Yeah, so if we're looking at so we have the body-worn cameras. We're gonna have to bring it into the precinct, and so it's gonna be rotated to the incoming shift and the outgoing shift, right? So we're gonna have to find a way to download what's being recorded on these cameras. So we have to have a program in place because we don't want to, like OTEC said, we don't want to burn it to a DVR or a CD media. We want to store it in a cloud or into a hard drive storage. And then from there, we're going to need people to make sure it's downloaded properly, it's managed properly, the evidence can be burned to provide to the prosecutors, to defense attorneys as well, under rules of discovery.
So in what ways can we assist, or would that be an MOU or an MOA with OTEC and the Guam Police Department? And then also,
not
is there a
necessarily,
cost?
because within the Guam Police Department, we do have an MIS section. And so we have two civilians on board who manage a wide array of different programs that we have. We have quite a few electronic-based programs. We have a records management system, a computer-aided dispatch, a mobile field reporting. We have about 6 or 7 different programs running at our crime lab section as well.
And then, Chief, with the federal grant and the matching funds, are you able to tell us how many body-worn cameras that would allow you to purchase, and would that be enough to cover the number of officers?
So based on the program that we're planning to implement, we're looking at 43 body-worn cameras with the funding that's made available currently. And that includes body-worn camera and also the storage.
And could you share a little bit more info, and then I'll close for sure, on which officers would be in this program? So you said 43.
Primarily, of course, our patrol officers, because they have of course, they're the first line in our department and their interaction with the community. And then, of course, we look at our specialized units, like a criminal investigation division, and maybe our special operations division. Yeah, the officers that are more prone to have contact with victims and suspects and the community at large.
Senator Taitague, anything further? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Chief, thank you so much for your favorable testimony. And if you don't mind, I'd like to work with you and make these changes. So if you could make the staff available, we'll get those in before we try and get the bill onto the session agenda.
Yes, sir, and we look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
And if there's no further testimony, that will conclude our public hearing on Bill number 181-37. We'll now take a very brief recess before we reconvene for the oversight hearing on the Guam Department of Education. Welcome back. The Committee on Education, Public Safety, and the Arts will now reconvene to hold an oversight hearing on the Guam Department of Education. The agenda includes the following: status update on facilities and maintenance, capital improvement projects, and public health compliance, as well as school violence and threats. We'll also have time for public comment. And again, this oversight hearing is actually required by public law. Forgive me, I don't know the public law number, but it stems from Bill number 159-37 that we passed. And it Section D of this law reads, until such time as all GDOE public schools have obtained sanitary permits required under this chapter, the Guam Department of Education shall be subject to monthly oversight hearings to report on the status of its compliance or non-compliance with Article 7, Chapter 26 of these rules and regulations. And so I would like to welcome Superintendent Dr. Kenneth Swanson, and I know that he has some new deputy superintendents who break them in tonight. Welcome to the show.
Thank
good
you
evening.
for welcoming my new team. They're
Thank you,
excellent.
Superintendent. Did you want to introduce the team, or did you have an opening statement?
Yes, my new team right next to me is Mr. Ken Perez, who is coming from the accreditation and certification side of the house back to leading our community services crew with a little bit of reorganizational skills that are going on right now too. And behind me is Mrs. Camacho, who is our new FAS, much to Frank's pleasure, who can go back to the audit world. And on someplace else here is our new PIO, Tess Reyes, who's taken over the public relations side of our operation just this last week. And those are the newest members of my leadership team, so you'll be hearing from them a lot. The other folks here that you already met and our resources to help out with details tonight if you have questions.
Thank you, Superintendent. And so would you like to proceed with your opening statement?
Yes. Senators, good evening. We're pleased to be with you this evening to provide the requested updates on capital improvements, facilities and maintenance projects, public health inspections compliance, school violence, and perceived threats. We've provided two of the exhibits referenced herein in hard copy in your folder and a digital file of a third one that is reflecting of all of our maintenance and work requests across the system for the current school year. It's a rather lengthy document and it's 100+ pages, so we didn't print it. The file is extensive and is to be kept digital for your convenience. You should have received these files as well as the PowerPoint slides for this presentation this evening. So if we could have the first slide up, and we'll go on to about the third. There we go, and continue. So, and we'll cover those three areas in the order that they were in the previous slide. We'll be talking about the major projects and the status of public health inspections, and then school violence and threats. Exhibit 1 is it's in your folder, is the facilities and maintenance and CIP document. And then Exhibit 2 is the safety inspection and public health reports. I'll explain each of those as we go along. As we have several CIP projects underway, as well as several more in the procurement process, the system-wide air conditioning purchase, install, and maintenance contract is now active, and the contractor is working in each of the 4 island regions simultaneously. Work began 2 weeks ago and is progressing. The contractor has nearly exhausted supplies of units that are on island, but has several more containers of units inbound to begin arriving next week. We anticipate the work continuing through the remainder of the school year. The FBLG school refurbishment project bid process has been completed, and the package is being prepared by our procurement team for legal review. The bid did come in over the budgeted amount by just over $1 million, and hopefully this can be remedied during the legal review and move the package to the Attorney General and the Governor for final approval. The GDOE-wide refurbishment project has cleared the bid process. However, the vendor bid came in over 300% above the ARP funded and obligated money that we had set aside. We'll be selecting schools in each sector of the island to be refurbished and work during the legal review to confirm our options on target specific schools and use all of our allocated funds while searching for additional funding to service more of the schools on the same bid if that's possible. Hopefully surplus funding can be located along with actual receipt of FEMA reimbursements that can be channeled to the remaining schools. Tentative plans will be providing right now for 9 of our schools to be refurbished under this contract, and we have the funds for that. The George Washington High School gym is projected and has been moving along on schedule, repairing structural issues. The project should be complete by year's end, provided work stays on schedule. There is a remaining need to repaint the interior of the gym, refurbish seating, locker rooms, and the main court. The need for funding for all of our athletic facilities across the system is significant, and we'll continue to search for funding to do this work while we continue to work with public health to repair schools and pass sanitation permit inspections. Currently, our F&M teams, limited as they are serving daily needs and targeting specific schools as they prepare for their public health inspections. We are working closely with public health in the process and have a strong working relationship with inspectors and managers. Wettengale Elementary School is under inspection this week, and Estumbo Elementary and Agata Johnson Middle School are to follow immediately. We have provided a detailed spreadsheet for reflecting the status of inspections across the system. I draw your attention to the listing of schools, and this is on the handout, and if we could have that next slide up. Then if I've done that already, go continue. Well, then we've done that. Going to the next one. And the next one, that I'm looking for the spreadsheet. There we go, that slide. Okay, I draw your attention to the listing of schools and the school conducted inspection results. In the first column is the 2 columns of the listing of schools, and the gray section is the scores they gave themselves when they did a self-inspection. And the results in the next 2 columns, the beige ones, are the results from our facilities and maintenance folks doing the same inspection with the standards for public health. And the green columns are the schedule and sequence of schools yet to be inspected. The second page reflects the status of schools currently under inspection and reinspection, and the last section on that bottom left side reflects the 12 schools that have passed and their respective scores. I encourage the senators to reflect back on the initial classification of schools and their relative phases. You will notice that the schools scheduled for April in Phase 3 are the Phase 3 schools that would take the most work to pass inspection. We've placed the high schools still on to be inspected in this window because high school campuses may offer more possible demerits because of their size and complexity, and we don't want to have the public health rating cause a school to have to close prior to graduation. Now that we have our air conditioning outcomes, our contracts operational, we are also targeting schools yet to be inspected so that those possible demerits will be eliminated before the fact. We'll actually have that problem solved. As a matter of a request from the system, we are requesting this body to consider adjusting the expiration date of inspections to the anniversary date of the individual inspection rather than the across-the-board June 30th expiration that's now in effect. Should all of our certificates continue to expire as scheduled, we'll be back at the same place we were last July, where we are also in the midst of our work with Guam Power Resource personnel to develop a RFP for implementation of a private-public partnership for maintenance management that will enhance and streamline the procurement of materials and supplement our own labor force. I'll pause at this point to have my student services personnel take the presentation from this point.
Mr. Swanson,
Yes.
Superintendent Swanson, if we could just, did you have questions on the F&M and the CIP? If we could break it up and then we'll proceed with the school violence?
Fine,
Okay.
however you want to do
Senator
it.
Taitague?
Yeah, I'm just curious on the expiration dates that you just said on the second to last paragraph here. Considering adjusting the expiration date, anniversary date of individual inspections rather than across the board on June 30th. Which list am I looking at to give that determination? What
I'm
list?
sorry, I'm having
I'm
trouble
sorry.
hearing you.
Which list am I looking at to give me that determination per school on the expiration date? Is there a list here?
Senator, just correct me if I'm wrong, so no matter when the sanitary permits are issued,
Right,
district-wide for every school, they all expire on June 30th
right. And then he's requesting that it's done
on
differently.
the anniversary
What-
date. Yeah.
On the anniversary of the inspection date. So I'm just wondering where that list is, because then you're, instead of across the board, you're going to have different schools at different timelines. So,
Right.
oh, there, status of inspections.
the
I
one.
see it. Okay.
So for example, you look in the
It's
center
on the back
column in the
page,
green
my
one.
bad, okay.
That's the date they were certified. But regardless to that date, under the current law, it would all expire on June 30th.
Right,
What we're
understand.
asking is to have it work on the anniversary date so we can have a hope of getting caught up.
Okay, I see. Okay, that's all. Just wanted
thank
to
you, Senator
clarify that.
Taitague.
Thank you.
Yes, Superintendent, I've done some initial research, not much, but just a little bit, and I want to come up with a solution for this because I agree that it is going to present some big problems come July 1st of next year. And then, as you guys know, the compliance timeline was moved back to the start of next school year. So
Correct.
in my mind, I'm anticipating come July 1st, we're going to be stuck with having to adjust and also wait for public health, right, to be able to inspect these schools. And I think that, and I understand prior to the start of this school year, the schools weren't ready, but I think things are going to be a lot more fluid next year. So this is something we do want to address, but at the same time, I don't want to go and, set a standard and then weaken the standard.
No,
So I'm just trying to figure out how we can do it without any unintentional consequences.
I understand that, and I completely agree. My point is, that as we complete these processes, we're continuing to do other maintenance that moves us. My goal would be, okay, we got them all certified at least at a C level, now let's get to a B. Because as I said some months ago, and this one bid that came in, when someone asked me what I thought it would take for us to get where we needed to be entirely, it would be $500 million in 10 years. And we don't have that much time, and we sure don't have that much money. So we're trying to move this and not slide backwards at all.
I appreciate that, Superintendent. I'd like to recognize my colleague, Senator Joanne Brown.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Senator Taitague?
What you were talking about earlier, I'm trying to understand on the expiration you're requesting, that I'm looking at this sheet here where it says schools that need reinspection. And you have, like, let's say, for instance, CL Taitano, it's 10/12/23. Okay, so that is an inspection made from public health or the inspection that you're doing in-house?
Which one, I'm sorry.
It's
Okay,
this one that says schools that need re-inspection, currently under inspection, have been inspected this year.
Okay,
Okay, that list. And then it says, let's give an example. For instance, in bold, you have CL Taitano, 10/12/23. Now, does that mean it was inspected by public health 10/23? Okay, so it was inspected by public health in 10/23. It received 38 demerits, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that, of course, is...
that's a passing score.
That's a passing, okay. So I'm just trying to figure what are the other schools that you're requesting? If these schools passed,
On the previous sheet,
right,
in that same right hand, you see the months that they're scheduled to be inspected in.
to be re-inspected, you mean?
There's only one that's being re-inspected, and that's
The one on the
Weddingdale.
end?
That's on the right side, that's their initial inspection. So that's the month that they're scheduled in. So we have several this month in November.
Okay, so give me an example of Liguan Elementary. Based on your comment in that last paragraph, you're asking that instead of across the board of June 30th, what date would it expire for Liguan Elementary?
Right now, they have not been inspected. Our teams have inspected them, but Public Health has not. They are scheduled to be done this month.
Okay, and then once they're inspected, you're asking for?
With regard to the date,
Yeah.
that the expiration date would be a year after the certificate is issued.
Inspected.
Yeah, Senator, so how it works now is no matter what date the school is inspected on, if they're inspected today,
Right,
then
right.
it still expires on June
Yeah, I
30th.
get
If they
it.
were inspected on June 28th,
Right.
it still expires on.
So it's all sporadic then. All these schools will have different timelines, which probably makes it easier for public health as well. Because everything expiring at one time, you have a mass group, so.
As you may recall, prior to a certain law,
Yeah.
they were issuing the sanitary permit for the whole district without conducting the school site inspections. And so I think that's kind of where it
Yeah.
became practice.
Yeah, okay, now I understand what you're trying to do, you make it different days. Okay, that kind of makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitague. Soup, I did have a few questions. I received a concern from a teacher about the timeline for the ceiling tile replacement.
Who wants to answer ceiling tile?
So for those watching, just to bring them up to speed, we know that the Guam Department of Education and probably you guys weren't the only one, but after the storm, there was a great need for ceiling tiles
Right.
across the island. And so basically, we have been out of ceiling tiles, which has led to conditions in the schools where you have the exposed ceilings. And I get calls from parents, teachers,
Right.
staff, basically saying that, dust and vectors can come down from that. So is there a timeline?
We do not have a timeline on when there will be delivery on island. We have the funding to buy it. And we're still working with the 4 lease schools. That's another financing issue, but the materials for them are not available on island yet either. So that's what we're working on. We're trying to buy the assets. We have the funding to do it. We can do that. And we've gotten it ordered, but we don't have them yet. As soon as we have them, believe me, I got several schools that I can reopen as soon as I can get the ceiling tiles in. I want them in last week, but we can't buy them.
Kind of at maybe one of the first couple hearings that I conducted as the chair of education, I had shown some photos of Juan Guerrero, and they had these construction debris piles from classrooms that had been bulldozed, and then they had built some new things. But the point being, I was up at Juan Guerrero a few weeks back, and the piles are still there. The principal's very frustrated, and I think I brought this issue up, I want to say 4 or 5 times in 3 separate hearings. And the reason I keep bringing it up is because I'm anticipating that something's going to get done about it. And so when I was out at the school, it was very frustrating to know that in here spewing this hot air, trying to put that pressure on to get things done, and mentioning specific incidents or specific issues that, the stakeholders at the schools would like to see addressed, and then show up to the school and lo and behold, nothing has happened. And it's been, 6, 7, 8 months this term, but this debris has been there for several years. I mean, I think before the pandemic. So, and I'll just clue you in. I know you just got here, but what they had told me before was there was an issue with securing a dump truck and a backhoe to get onto the campus to move that. So is that still the issue? Is there any update?
It's still an issue, and we have a few campuses left to remove and this is their Baligaskas program. As soon as our budget cycle releases funds for the new budget, that's one of the things that we have in the pipeline to get done. As we have some other campuses, the one that came to my mind was the things that live behind GW. Those are finally gone. But we still have some more. We've uncovered mountains.
Air conditioning contracts. I know in your testimony you had said here that the contractor has nearly exhausted supplies of units on island, but has several more containers of units inbound. Oh, that doesn't sound good. To begin arriving next week. And so, again, I am in constant receipt of communication from teachers, students, parents about this air conditioning issue. And I think the frustration was exacerbated when, and I know you recall when Superintendent or Deputy Sanchez had said that we would have air cons in the classrooms by July, and I think he had said this in May. It's now November. And I know the contract's in play, but we're dealing with very frustrated stakeholders at the school level. And so in your report to the board, you had talked about the prioritization of the installation of these ACs, and I think it was something like cafeterias, libraries, then SPED classrooms, and you had also said that there were multiple teams deployed across the district. Correct me if I'm wrong, a team in the north, south, central. But the installations and the repairs of the air conditioners simply not happening fast enough for the stakeholder population. So other than this information, is there any more detail that you can provide? And maybe start specifically with Tamuning Elementary as one of the schools where it's a very hot campus. And they've been, I got 10 messages today asking about the status of that.
And the equipment that goes in that school are larger units that were not available here. That's part of the freight that's incoming. I don't know. I've put the priority to the vendor to do Tamuning and Attica Johnson and a couple of others first. And they will do that, but they have to match the equipment to the need. And so that's the problem with it. But they've been very, very cooperative so far. And I would like to have it all done by now as well, but we can't install what's not here. But they are being responsible and responsive and getting it. As soon as they knew they were going to have the bid, they ordered the material.
Also, in the last board meeting, you had reported to the board as part of your superintendent's report to the Guam Education Board, October 17th. And I'm going to go ahead and read from your report. To date, we have had little to no success processing key Mawar recovery-related procurements through GSA, DPW, Homeland Security using the DLAN process. The need remains to procure support for security fencing replacement, mold mitigation, skilled labor supply, and other essential support using the initial $20 million appropriated for that purpose. Efforts are continuing to energize the process through DOA officials to either process the procurements or move the funding back to GDOE for its intended use. This actually came up in session. This $20 million saga just will not go away. So can you give me the latest information and the status?
The latest information that I have after a conversation with Mr. Byrne and Department of Administration and also with the governor, Lieutenant Governor, that process and the first priority is the mold mitigation. The RFI is supposed to be out tomorrow. That conversation I had this afternoon with the Attorney General, and they're pressing that forward as well. Behind that immediately is the fencing one, and then the skilled trades contract to supplement our labor force. So they're actively and aggressively moving that through their procurement process.
Forgive me for thinking I heard this before.
Well, I know what your feelings are on it, Senator. However, all I can tell you is that all the players that have some capacity to make it happen have lined up and said, yes, we're doing it. And I've already signed off on one set of documents to move that process forward.
Yeah. Just to clarify, my feelings on it are that I want you guys to get your money's worth.
Well, I do too.
And that's it, yeah.
That's been my point all along. The money was put there for a purpose. We finally have access to it and a willingness and an effort with all the people that matter in that chain making it happen.
Well, I just pray that we don't see you here next month and it's a 180 from what you said tonight.
And as a backup for mold mitigation, I'm working with CDC and Department of Health and Human Services and FEMA on the DC end to put a similar project in place regardless. So
Okay.
we have it from two different levels.
Thank you, Senator Joanne Brown.
How are you doing, Mr. Chairman? It's good to see you again. You know, I do appreciate the questions, and of course, I think we all have a desire to see things move along. Out of all your schools adding up, you know, I appreciate you providing the timelines here for these further inspections and what the outstanding issues are that still need to be addressed. But out of all the schools that you have how many altogether? I think it's 42 schools altogether? Do I have the number right?
41,
Okay, 41. And then out of the 41, how many are fully operational now that you are able to have the students safely in the school for what they need to do there to be educated? What is that out of the 41 now?
well, we have, in terms of the inspection process, we have 12 that have completed, and we'll have 3 or 4 more this month. We're trying to be sure that they're passable before they ever inspected so that we don't have to go back and revisit it. But in terms of fully repaired and operational, none of them are. Are areas cordoned off and condemned and not in use? Yes. The only school that I think is not in that situation is JFK. They're using their whole facility, but we don't have. We have some spaces on every campus that cannot be used right now. And the solutions for some are minor, and for other ones, we have 4 different elementary schools that have the same architecturally designed cafeteria building that are going to take significant amounts of work in order to repair the roof on them and make them, they're not unsafe to be around, but they don't approach the sanitary standards that we want. So there's some big projects that have to be accomplished. GW, that's a campus that's really expensive, along with Southern. Those 2 campuses are going to take a lot of money to fix. But are the kids safe in the environment they're using? Yes, they are.
With regards to the procurement, I know our chairman brought up again the issue, I mean the mold, of course the fencing, we all discussed this at a previous hearing. Where are you with regards to your actual procurement? Has that gone through? Are you simply waiting for a company to be able to come in and do the mitigation? Do they have the capability of doing that on the scale you need? And
As
how
I
about for your
understand, the scope
fencing?
of work for the RFI is to solicit a company that is able to do the work, to express their interest, and then do the assessment to give us the final price so we can contract it. But that's the first stage in the procurement, is the RFI, the request for interest.
Are we just at the first stage? Is
Yes.
that where we're, and why is that? You had mentioned previously that Homeland was supposed to be assisting you as a result of the storm.
That was one of the ones that was bogged down in the DLAN process.
Okay, and so are you now, is DOE itself now facilitating its own procurement? Because you do have your own procurement division?
The DLAN folks are still, they're doing it. The problem was the roadblock in their organization, and they have solved that problem so they can move it. And so far, the evidence I've seen this week, and based on our conversations last week, they are moving it.
Are you aware, do you have the companies? I mean, I'm sure we have fencing, because we have a lot of military fencing going up, so I'm sure there are companies here that provide fencing, but for the mold mitigation, do you have companies out there that provide that service and could address on the scale, obviously, that's going to be needed?
There are 2 companies that I've heard of on island that are certified to do that work. And DODEA used one from off island, so that's why the proposal is out.
And what's your time frame to actually get that in place? Because, I mean, that's something, I mean, especially for respiratory concerns, one would consider that very important. How much more time is it going to take to get what you need in place? Because it's been, 5-6 months since the typhoon? That's a long stretch.
It is a long stretch, Senator, and that's why we kept cleaning everything we can ourselves, because we can't not do that. But I don't know how fast it's going to be to procure that process. The response to this initial stage is going to tell us the rest of the story.
Well,
I think they put a 2-week cycle on that part of the process. So I should know before Thanksgiving who the interested bidders are.
And after that, how much more time would be before you can select a company to go in there and do the
the
work?
the estimate that we were given to work with is $8 to $10 million for the project. That means it has to go through the procurement approval process with the Attorney General's office before it gets to the governor. So we're trying to push and expedite it, but we can go it depends on how well, from what I've learned here about procurement on Guam, is the better that the package is put together, the faster it clears the legal review.
And have you had those discussions with the Attorney General or the Governor's office that once you have this packet ready to move forward for their review, are they
Yes.
going to assist and facilitate and expedite the review?
Their posture is that they have two attorneys that are standing by to deal just with this and get it managed and get it moved on.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I know it's a complicated process, but at the same time, it's a very slow process. I mean, DOE has been in operation a long time, and it sounds like we're just kind of taking baby steps and crawling around when we really should be, we should be running already. And that I guess that's where the concern is. I mean, I understand the challenges of things that are beyond your capability, like getting the air conditioners. I mean, you can only install them as soon as they're on island. But these other things that are within reach, that should have been within reach, that should have been perhaps even emergencies, because we've given you that opportunity to do that. But there is a set timeline that you can use emergency. That, goodness, should have long expired by now, because we're way past that. We're waiting for the next emergency. But I'm hoping you're looking at your internal processes to see how you can facilitate so that your people can be on top of these issues, because there's always going to be infrastructure challenges. You have so many facilities to take care of. It's going to be ongoing, typhoon or no typhoon, earthquake or no, whatever the case may be, that they're geared up to respond, and I just don't get that impression.
Well, I will just say this, one of the underlying reasons for the leadership changes that you've seen in the organization are to help move those processes forward. I'll agree that there's been things in the organization that have been self-defeating, for lack of a better term, and we're working to eliminate those.
I know, especially when you have the luxury of focusing on very specific missions every day. Because if I had to do the same job every day, I think I'd be on top of my job. That would be the hope. And that's why for those of us that don't get to do this every day, we're kind of like wondering what the heck's going on. That your key people that are working in these areas are not on top of it to facilitate. Because to take 5 or 6 months to just start procuring for mold mitigation, which was something very evident as a result of the storm, maybe even without the typhoon, you may still have had issues of mold where there are leaks. And I mean, I understand some of these buildings are, they were built back in the 60s. They're much older than Simon Sanchez, even though everyone talks about Simon Sanchez. But I've been to some of these schools. I've attended. I've been a student there. And I understand the challenges with that. But more the reason you would expect your key people that are in charge of these, that have the oversight, would be on top of it. And, just like I said, we're taking baby steps on something we should already be running with. So I hope your new team is going to be successful in facilitating, because, things are not moving to a level that one would expect to see as a smooth operation. And there are, in spite of the fact it's a large organization, there's certain things that should move. They should always move, irregardless of who's in charge. And that's what we definitely want to see. I hope you're putting that in place, because I think we're already at a point of, we're blue in the face already. And I'm sure these concerns are reflective of everybody out in the community, particularly those parents and family members that have children in the system that are concerned about the safety and well-being of their children and the environment they're in. Least of all, if it's not a safe environment, how do we expect our kids to learn? There's got to be some place that they can go that's safe. And I think we all want that. So I'm hoping that what you put in place is going to help facilitate that. Because a month or 2 or 3, we're going to be, really blue in the face. We're not going to want to hear this anymore. We want to see that you're going down the checklist, and this is where we're at, and we're narrowing it down, and we're only down to these few schools, and this is the timeline, and this is what we're expecting to be executed. And, here's the finish line. So you have an immense time. I'm surprised you're still here, honestly. Good luck to you. It's a tough job, and you have the infrastructure and the politics that's been there for many years. Things don't move for a reason. There are people that have been sitting in DOE for a long time that just, they're very good at making sure things don't happen. And this is the end product. And you're going to have your new people that are going to be up against that wall of the politics that will feel that resistance. And they'll be targeting them to move them out of the way because they've been able to do that for so many years. So good luck. It's tough. It's tough the way our government system is set up to be unproductive. So I wish you well, but I also want to relay as time goes on, because we will be here. I don't know about our other colleagues, but we will be here, to go down that checklist with you, and we want to ultimately see that these key issues are addressed. So with that, Mr. Chair, I don't have any further questions or comments at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Taitague? Are you okay? Okay. Superintendent, can you apprise us of the situation we had met about relative to lack of typhoon insurance for some of the lease schools?
I wish I could explain that, except they don't have it. The lease process is set up, this is, as we've explained it to some other folks, it's like we live in someone's house that they rented for us. I can't move my money to the leaseholder, the owner of the property. That has to come out of the executive branch. Their attorneys are working it to release money in the funds that they have from, as my understanding, from the budget surplus that materialized, to be able to move that to the GEF group so that they can spend the $5 million that they need to spend to finish those 4 lease schools. We're trying to purchase the ceiling tiles on our own to get them in, because 2 of the buildings they have been able to restore enough that if we had the ceiling tiles in, we could reopen them because they're pretty well repaired. And so once we get the materials on island, we'll buy them and put them in ourselves. And then let the rest of the process that the owner group has to deal with, let them deal with it on their own. But that'll get us back in our buildings.
So that's an issue that you're currently working out with the attorneys from the governor's office?
With the attorneys from the governor's office to do the mechanism that will let them transfer the money from their funds to the leaseholder, so that they can, because they've already got a contractor lined up to do all the work, and they've got the cost broken out.
There was also a series of stories in the media that were spurred from a Board of Education meeting in which the program director for Head Start testified that there were tests conducted at some of the schools, and tests for lead in the water had come back positive, and then there are also some positive results for lead paint at some of the schools. And I know that we had talked about this, and you had made, or the department had made some subsequent comments to the media. Is there any update you could provide on that issue?
The last that I have on it is that we procured the sealant to put on the doors. We're going to remove all the doors in this process that we're going to move all of them. So the process that we're doing the refurbishment, those repairs are made to those buildings, so we'll remove the doors completely, but they've been sealed so that they're not at risk.
I talked to a former board member, and he had told me, and I can't remember the number of years ago, but that there was a grant that GDOE had received, and they had tested water throughout the district for lead. Do we have any plans underway to test all of the schools?
We're
working with the WIRA lab at the university to do testing.
And so you can confidently say on the record that there's no risk being posed to students or staff relative to lead contamination at the school sites?
At the facilities we've had tested, which is 20 of our facilities, the 2 sources that had lead they're not in service, they're out. The rest of the testing showed a negative, not a negative, but a very low level that was well below the thresholds. We're going to go ahead and test all the rest of the system, but we have not done that yet.
Is there a timeline on that?
We're trying to get it done before the year is out, but that negotiation's still going on with the lab at the university. It's a pretty big chunk for them to do at one time. And the people who take the samples have to be trained a certain way to do it. So it's going to take us a little time to help them do the sample collection.
Can I ask, so I know that John F. Kennedy High School, Simon Sanchez are in the double session, right? Are there any plans to relocate the Simon Sanchez student population to any other campus, or is this double session something that we're going to see for the entire 23-24 school year? And on that note, could you also update us on the other campuses that are being shared and the timeline for when those shared campuses will no longer be shared?
Okay, Simon Sanchez at this point is not scheduled to go to any other campus. There isn't one to have them go to unless we were to put them on the southern campus. And I don't know that that would be a good idea. The FBLG is all hinges on the contract bid that just came in. That budget was $4 million, it came in at $5 million. We have to work with the attorneys to see if we can do probably two things: reduce some of the cost and then also find some extra money to put with it. And as fast as that project can be done, they will go back in their own campus as soon as it's finished. The other ones are all doubled up based on the availability of classroom space. So for example, the alternating schedule at Mooning, as soon as they get the rest of the air conditioning in, they can go back to their regular schedule. And we've got the materials coming in to do that. The other ones are all schools that are displaced from the lease schools. And as soon as, that's why we're going to go ahead and try and put the ceiling tiles in ourselves, so we can get the kids back in. As soon as we get them in, then they're back in their home school.
So Simon Sanchez will
For next year,
more than likely remain at JFK for this school year.
we will go through a process to identify facilities that are surplus to our need later in this school year, after the Christmas break, because our enrollment is down enough where we might be able to create a space for them to go and be on their own during a regular school day. But a high school is not the same as an elementary school in terms of what they need and for facilities and for offering their curriculum.
Thank you. Where's the Mr. Palomo? Is Mr. John Palomo here? Oh, thank you. Thank you for your hard work, sir, and also to your division for all the hard work that you guys have been doing to not only bring us into compliance, but to get the school safer for the kids. I always hear your name. They talk about you in a good way at all the schools. They talk about when you come by with the staff. So I just want to let you know that we appreciate your hard work, and I know that you don't have all the resources to do that work, so I appreciate it even more. Soup, I guess so FB Leon Guerrero, also, you're not anticipating them returning this school year?
I don't believe they will,
Okay.
no.
So my son goes to FB, he attends FB, and so he's been in the shared schedule it's going to be his second complete school year after this one, right? And so this schedule, so in case you don't know, he goes to school around 12, gets off, well, this time, then it's to go home. And so it's, then on the flip side, I get a lot of complaints from parents of students of John F. Kennedy, parents of students of John F. Kennedy High School, and they talk about having to be at the bus stop at like 5 a.m. And I know that's beyond your control, but that's why I'm trying to relay the urgency that I don't really feel comfortable with, and I'm sure you don't either, the double sessions, right? There's a million studies that show that having kids at the bus stop at 5 in the morning and, in class by 6 does nobody any good. And so I just want to relay the urgency. As Senator Brown has said, I'm starting to learn not to expect, and I'm not comfortable with it, progress to happen as quickly as I like. And I understand that, month to month, we're not going to see the progress that we want to see. And it's frustrating. But I also recognize that we have seen these little incremental changes. For example, in May, there was no AC contract. There are no ACs being installed at the school. And now come November, it's happening. And so Relative to the double sessions, I just would ask that you guys work hard to identify, and we've spoke about this before, any possible alternative location, site, campus that would alleviate the burden on not just the student population, right? Because I think that this it distracts them from focusing on the academics, and there's so many other areas that because of our shortcomings as a department and as a government of Guam that we're putting these challenges in front of our students. We're putting the 90-degree classrooms. We're putting the moldy walls. We're creating all these barriers for our students to try and break through in order to be successful. And I think that obviously I want to see a day where we're not talking about ceiling tiles and air conditioners, and what we are talking about is what we should be talking about, which is focusing on the academics and the learning and the ways that we can ensure the students' success. So thank you for that update, Superintendent. And then I know Deputy Superintendent Perez, we're now going to pivot to school violence, right, which is, and before you get into your presentation, the reason why I added this to the agenda is obviously I'm not sure and I'm curious to see the data, if we're seeing an uptick, but just, I've been getting a lot of videos, and parents send me these videos of all the different fights. I even found an account on Instagram that posts fight videos from all the different schools, and I watched a video of students at George Washington High School fighting in a hallway with boxing gloves on. Right? And all I'm thinking is these students are unsupervised for long enough for a lot of these incidents to occur. So for me as the Education Oversight Chair, to me that raises questions of, are we using our resources wisely? Do we need to detail or maybe assess how we're spreading our person power around the schools? Because when I watch these videos, I get a couple takeaways. One is that obviously we have discipline problems at the school level, and then more importantly, the students feel very comfortable with what they're doing, and they don't seem to be worried about getting caught or the repercussions. And so I definitely want to get more information on this. This is another issue that I get a lot of calls on, from parents of students who they say have been bullied, and then also, on the other side, from parents whose children have been accused of doing the fighting. And so any data you can share with us to provide any insight would be appreciated.
Well, on our Exhibit 3, if we can refer to that one, I can just go through this and then we can actually explain, especially what we've been working with. We've been working with the law enforcement as well as our local law enforcement as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But moreover, on Exhibit 3, this will be, not that one, that's okay. Well, we're looking at data qualifiers as the first thing. We have 4 complete school years, and we're also, if you were looking at the chart with this one, okay. All right, very good. And then, thank you, Senators. And the current school year of violent behavior data and protective factors in place in support of our schools, and especially our staff. The report includes a data dictionary that you also have that operationally defines problem behaviors associated with the violent behavior. The data reported is based on these 9 behaviors. One of them is bullying, cyberbullying, terrorist attacks, or terrorist conduct, use of possession of a weapon, the endangerment of fighting, assault and battery, rioting, sexual harassment, sexual assault adjudicated by school administrators across all 41 schools. But as we see on the highlights on graph 1, data shows the aggregate number of school violence events per year over the past 4 complete school years, as you can see on that chart, from the green to the blue. The blue is actually incomplete. So that's just for the beginning of this year, so far. But school year 23-24 reflects total school violence offenses year to date, and therefore an incomplete school year. but refer to the school violence report for a disaggregated data based on the specific 9 behavioral offenses. The highest number of school violence events occurred in 22-23, with 1.28 educated offenses. The data does not show a progression in the number of events over the past 4 complete years, school years. This may be attributed to the COVID pandemic that happened in 2020, starting in that January, and impacting subsequent years through the first semester of school year 21-22. Therefore, there were behavioral offenses adjudicated on 2021, but none that were school violence related. On graph 2, shows the aggregated number of school violence events committed by the elementary, middle, and high school for the past 4 years, complete school years. Actually, the blue one's is just a partial. But school year 23-24 reflects the total school violence offenses year to date, and therefore an incomplete school year. Again, please refer to the school violence report for disaggregated data based on specific grade levels. Although broken down by the number of events per year, for elementary, middle, and high school, the total events across all 4 complete years and current year for each level are as follows. Our elementary school equals 149, our middle schools 1,746, and our high school at 1,148. Based on the data, the majority of the events adjudicated were in middle schools. For the current school year of 23-24, the majority of the adjudicated offenses to date are in the high schools. But this violence data that we're looking at, the following protective factors outline our departmental structures to support school safety, and that's our concern. Our SOP 1200-018, Student Conduct Procedural Manual governs student conduct and the actions taken by the district to address school violence. This document requires the implementation of positive behavior intervention supports as the framework to establishing safe school environments. A guidance memo was disseminated to school administrators reminding of the SOP 1300-02 and the use of risk assessment matrix for schools to assess threats and appropriate actions. Threats with a risk assessment matrix score of medium or high include the involvement of the Marianas Regional Fusion Center, that's MRFC, with Guam Homeland Security to assist in identifying individuals behind social media threats. The DSE SCL also provided guidance to schools using social media accounts and steps they can take to contact social networking services, example, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, to shut down fake accounts not sanctioned by the school and to reinforce annually with teachers, students, and parents the importance of internet safety and the seriousness of posting threats online, subsequent disciplinary actions for anyone found guilty of the offense. But also, the following protective factors that we have actually in place, outlined our departmental structures to support school safety. We have our policy board, our board policy 379, education technology use policy, and 473, Children's Internet Protection Act, instructs GDOE schools to establish an acceptable use policy to govern students' use of technology and to follow when using department-issued technology, network telecommunications, video, hardware, and software. In a responsible, efficient, ethical, and legal manner, it further requires schools to provide student instructions on appropriate online behavior, social networking, and cyberbullying. And in order to provide awareness, skills, information, and support to aid in the safe usage of the internet. Some collaborations that we have done actually also with the FBI, the MRFC, GPD, as needed to identify students posting threats online, which did occur recently at the GW. GPD has proactively coordinated to conduct presentations at schools on the dangers of fighting, posting videos, and making threats online. Also, our men in blue has finished presentations at Southern High School and is currently coordinating with GW High School. The intent is to visit all schools and actually make that work. Any questions, sir? Senators?
Oh, Senator Taitague has a lot of questions.
I know, thank you.
Senator Taitague?
Thank you.
Mr. Perez, I appreciate all that data and information in your background. You know, I know research is one of your greatest attributes, so appreciate that information. But you know, it's a little bit different here on Guam. You know, with the reason why they fight. You know, we have a different culture here. There's, you know, there's just so much more involved. But that being said, you know, there is something that keeps crossing my mind. One video that I've watched where a school aide stood there watching the fight and couldn't touch. They were trying to figure out why the person didn't pull the other person out and to stop it. And then, you know, it was continuing on. He just stood there saying, stop it, stop it. And then finally it took somebody else to come in and break them up. Now, what is the law that says that they cannot pull these kids apart? Or, you know, because that's what I heard. You know, everybody was calling and saying, oh, he can't touch it because it's a touch the kids because it's a liability. I'm pretty sure you saw that video. I think it was 2 girls in a classroom, and he just stood there just saying, don't, you know, stop it, and would not break them up. So,
Senator Taitague, I can provide just
yeah.
just a little, because I did ask about this incident, and so from what I understand, not every employee at, let's use Southern High, for example, has received, there's a training protocol that they receive for how to break up the fights, and I think it's only the aides, certain aides who receive it, and from what I understand, in that instance that you're referencing, the employee didn't feel comfortable intervening, and so what they did was they went to the door and they were calling for the school aide to come, and so that's another issue with these videos. A lot of times is you get like the middle of it, or you don't get the whole video, and so I know that a lot of people had reacted the same way and saying, oh, why didn't this, and I'm not sure if it was a teacher or an aide, why didn't they do anything, but I actually talked to the Principal Mano down there, and that's what he had shared with me, and then he had also shared that he was going to ensure that all the employees got the training. And so is that something that we're going to see moving forward, where we have more staff availing of this training, which I'm not even sure exactly what it is?
It's a safe training that I've taken because I had the ED program. But this safe training is actually going to go out to the schools and the staff. So there won't be no lingering where they just stand and stuff. They'll even be able to provide a safety for the student to move away from the fight to this.
So they're training. So
that training is actually needs to be in place because there is also some liabilities for us if they're not restrained properly. If that's not done properly, then I mean, and you're not trained in that technique, that's going to cause us a whole bunch of other issues.
So yes, we do need those trainings for everybody. Even cafeteria workers. I mean, everybody under the sky. You know, janitors, anyone that works at the school should have this kind of training. I mean, they do that for, you know, shooters. You know, when they're doing the practice for in case there's a shooter. What do you do? You know, the teacher locks the door. You know, they barricade the door. Things like that. And is there any funding set aside for that?
We have. We have the trainers at our sections, and what they're doing is providing that, and then also working with Chris Anderson. We actually have some policies that are actually in place that's going to make this happen. So trainings like shooter on campus, bomb threats, we're actually working with GPD to have that training out to even all our schools. Because I wouldn't be, senators, I think we do have one here if we do training for the legislature. I mean, GPD is willing to do that.
Oh yeah, we needed it this week.
We needed it big time this week. It's no fun here, that's for sure. That being said, again, do you have funding for it?
Funding.
Okay. Next question is does GFT, well, it's obvious you don't know, but I hope you have funding set aside for, you know, bringing somebody in with experience, that can help teachers learn how to, with confrontation with students, everybody in the school. And I think we really need that. I don't see, according to your graph, things lessening. That being said, do you also have certain guidelines when a student fights, they're suspended or expelled? Are there harsher punishments for that now? Chris, I know you deal with that. Can you come on up, Chris? And because I know you're Mr. Discipline, and what is the status right now with providing harsher punishment for this stuff, or expel or suspended?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. I would like to stand firm in saying that the department's position with any of these offenses that you saw for school violence, they're all considered the most serious offenses that we have in our district, and the immediate actions that are taken by the school, which is standard across all schools, is up to a 10-day suspension. So, that's the initial step, is to suspend them for 10 days, and then depending on the specific behavioral offense, schools can request for a discipline advisory council hearing and request for additional 10 days, or possibly even expulsion, depending on how serious the behavioral offense was. But yeah, I think our procedures are pretty strict and straightforward, and more or less zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. Even though the students are still acting out, you see that in the data. You don't see any kind of decrease, any kind of significant decrease in the behaviors that we showed in the graphs. And those years that you saw, lower amounts of offenses, it's because of COVID. It wasn't because of, students, behaving themselves or being less likely to commit acts of violence. It exists in our schools, and I think our zero tolerance for fighting policy has been helpful, I think, in trying to send that kind of message to our students.
Okay, so how do you involve parents? Do they get involved when a student has, obviously started, let's say they started the fight, the first punch was thrown by one person. Sometimes these videos come in handy too, like
Right.
who really started the fight, to find out. I mean, the student can be just standing there and a kid comes up and just starts punching and beating him up, so it does come in handy. But parents' involvement.
They're an integral part of the solution, and they are brought in. Obviously, anytime a student is suspended from school, and they're of compulsory age, specifically under the age of 18, parents are called in to be a part of the process. One thing that schools try and do, even for fighting offenses, is to try and leverage suspension days for parent shadowing. So parents are given the option. Your child can either be out of school, and it's not all fighting offenses, but depending on the nature of the event, that may be appropriate. But I know one tactic that administrators use is to try and leverage the suspension days to get parents to come in and shadow their child.
Shadow them. Yeah.
And that's actually worse than a suspension.
Right.
To have a high school or a middle school age student have their parent
Sounds good.
shadowing them around the campus. But
Yeah.
parental involvement is critical
Okay.
in our ability to address this.
But Chris, when do you find it that this kid really needs some serious, they might have some mental issues? And this
Absolutely.
is, I know you have counselors, but are counselors prepared at the schools? Is that kind of counselor that you have in your schools? Or when a child has some kind of issues mentally, how does the school get involved when they know this?
The counselors at the school have, I think, their limits to what they can do in terms of some of the mental health concerns that some of our students have, but we have 4 psychologists on staff, and schools can refer and recommend for services from our psychologists to do actual therapeutic counseling with some of these students who do have some serious challenges. We'll consider them our Tier 3 students.
No, thank you for that information.
Sure.
Just knowing that it's, even though we suspend these kids or expel them, they need help. Anybody who wants to, throw a punch at a kid for no reason, there's got to be an issue with them, and it's not just a matter of just expelling them. It's a matter of helping our students, helping them to become better people, in society. And
I completely agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, every student that doesn't graduate becomes a liability out in the community. We'll eventually experience it at some point, right? So it's important for us to try and do our best to ensure that all kids are safe and that they can complete their education. But it's a very challenging task.
What is the school that's in Santa Rita, the school that where kids from DYA or, other kids?
Well, we used to have the JP Torres
JP Doris, yeah.
before. It's
Yeah.
it's not open right now, at least the alternative educational school.
Alternative, yeah.
But
That's not open right now? That's one of the schools that are down?
not as an alternative school. It's a success academy.
Yes. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
credit
is it
recovery.
still for the Agogwat kids, or is it just we're just
No.
calling it
It's
Success
a
Academy now?
credit recovery program.
Okay.
It's still JP Torres, but it's not alternative school in terms of, addressing kids that are tier 3 and the students who are either expelled and of compulsory age and need to have an alternative education, or whatever the case is. But that program is not in place right now with the department.
It's not up right now? I'm sorry, I didn't,
Yeah, no, it hasn't been in operation for, I want to say 5 or 6 years now. Is that, or 2015 was when it closed.
Is it, why? Why was it closed?
I'll defer. Deputy Joe, do you want
Joe?
to address that?
If you can state your name for the record.
Hi, good evening. Joe Sanchez, Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. So in 2014-15, I was tasked by the superintendent at the time, John Fernandez, to transition the program from an alternative school for behavior to a credit recovery for almost like adult education. And from what I recall, I don't handle the behavior part, but from what I recall, the concerns at the time was it was more like an out of sight, out of mind program, meaning the students were not actually getting the services, they were just being sent there. So the graduation rates were problematic. When they get back to their home school, they just get sent back. So really, it was questionable about the success of the program. It was successful in that it gets the students out of the original school, but in terms of the potential services and benefit to the students who need the help, I guess the judgment was that they weren't getting it. So the intent was to have a school-based program that allowed them to do, I forgot the name of it, but it was supposed to be at every school site where they would have a teacher or in some program that would actually try to support them at the school site, keep them in the community so that they don't feel like they're being ostracized, because that was one of the things that would happen when they get sent away and they don't feel connected to their school. When they get sent back, they end up being worse. So that's when the school was turned into, that function was changed to more of an adult high type program.
Which was separate and apart from the other schools? Or was it integrated into the schools?
The behavior part was supposed to be integrated into the schools.
Right, but is it still separate?
The credit recovery part is still separate. So,
and where is that located?
physically, it's located at the central office campus.
Okay.
So there's a building that's across
And
the
it's-
street from headquarters.
And it's up and operational?
It's up and operational.
Okay. What happens to the kids at DYA?
DYA we have a school. The Chamorro word is leading from a good one. Yeah, so we operate a school within DYA in partnership with the Department of Youth Affairs, and we service both short-term and long-term students. So the students who are there, as long as they're of school age and as long as they haven't graduated yet, they would go to that school.
Okay. And how many staff do you have there from DOE?
I think it's
at
6.
DYA? 6?
6 teachers.
6 teachers there? Okay. And they're full-time there? All
They're
throughout the
full-time
year?
there. They're all
Okay.
DOE teachers. They're all certified.
Okay.
They're all they're there full-time.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that's all my questions, and thank you, Chris. I
Thank
know
you,
that
Senator
your
Taitague.
job is really tough, so.
Senator Brown, did you have anything on the school violence threats? Good.
I know it's challenging. I mean, you guys need to do what you need to do. I don't want to belabor it this evening. I think we just need to stay on top of it, and I hope our next status hearing here, we just want to see the continued progress. I hope the mechanisms and the people you put in place will help facilitate that. So I give you credit, Superintendent Swanson, you're still here. I hope you keep chipping away.
I'm not leaving, and that's scaring a few people.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm not one of them.
We
so,
actually love it here, so.
Okay, well, I'm happy that you're here to continue to do what you do, but like I said, I think we want to, at some point, as I mentioned in the last hearing, we just don't want the excuses anymore. We want to see the progress and moving forward and get these kids back in a safe environment. Let's get on with the business of educating them. So with that, Mr. Chair, thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Just on the threats part, so you mentioned that you worked in conjunction with the FBI, the MRFC, and GPD relative to this latest threat at George Washington High School. So is there an established protocol for these, not the school fights, but these threats of violence that are targeted at, schools, shootings, that kind of thing? Is there a separate protocol that the department has for those types of incidents?
Deputy, thank you, Senator Barnett, for the question. Deputy Perez had made reference to a guidance memo that he had sent out to all school administrators, giving them guidance, or just basically reminding them of the operating procedures we have in place and the use of this risk assessment matrix to try and assess the level of threat and then what actions are going to take in terms of whether they need to either do a shelter in place or do something of that nature to try and address whatever the threat is. That same guidance memo did give some guidance in terms of, depending on if their risk level was medium or high, that they could then contact the MRFC and get them engaged to try and address or use their tools or use their resources to try and help address that threat. We don't have any established protocols in the department in terms of how students use social media outside of the school environment. Obviously, that would be very difficult to control, but Deputy Perez did make mention of some of the board policies and stuff that require schools to do training with students on the proper use of technology and the proper use of being on the internet. And so we're hoping that, of course, that constant instruction that students are getting every year will hopefully make a difference in terms of them making a better choice. But in terms of students posting like they did at GW, and then there was also a threat that was made at Estumbo Middle School that the FBI got involved in. They didn't get involved in the GW case, but they did support the Estumbo Middle School threat. Yeah, I think the involvement of outside entities, depending on what the level of threat is probably good guidance to give to the schools.
And I don't know if you already have, but I would appreciate if you communicate the protocol to the staff to include maybe the teachers if that's possible, because with this latest round of threats at GW, I was actually called by some teachers who had said they didn't feel comfortable going into school because they didn't really know much about what was happening other than what was reported in the media. So maybe that might appease some of the anxiety or frustration if there's ever another threat where you would have teachers know, like, okay, they're going to run this through their risk assessment matrix, and that, when it hits this certain number, then, it's serious, and then they involve the authorities instead of having teachers trying to teach throughout the day with, that in the back, not even necessarily in the back of their head, probably more in the front, they're worried.
Senator, on the GW case, since you mentioned that, I have to give kudos to Dexter Fullo, the principal, because he really put together a good plan to try and address those threats. Not only did he reach out to GPD to get their assistance with doing patrols or coming in and doing spot visits, he instituted blanket searches in the morning to ensure that everybody who came onto the campus was searched to ensure they didn't have any weapons on them. I don't know exactly what he was doing in terms of communicating with his school community, but I'm pretty confident he was also talking with his teachers to let them know the different things he was putting in place to try and address that threat. But the collaboration, GPD was very, very helpful with GW, trying to provide officers to have a presence on the campus and even to assist with the blanket searches that they were doing.
Thank you, Deputy.
Yeah.
Just a couple more things here. I was sent a photo of in Inalahan Middle School. So it actually went to Inalahan way back when I was in high school. But on the second floor, there's fencing there that's exposed, and a parent had sent me a picture of that with the worry that, any student who might be struggling with any kind of ideations while at school could possibly harm themselves by crawling over that, and it's on the second floor. So if you could maybe get Mr. Palomo to, I know we're waiting for the fencing, but if there's some kind of temporary fix that we can have it really go a long way with the school community at Inalahan Middle School. And then the other thing, I was in receipt of a letter from Familao and Rights. This was a couple days ago, and full disclosure, as you guys know, the head nurse, Mrs. Quinata, is my auntie, and so I had called her, and because the Family Law and Rights group had told me that they had heard that some of the feminine hygiene products, some of the schools didn't have them. And so this had been an issue a few months ago. I think it was during the budget session. And so I called Auntie Julieta, and I said, hey, what's going on? I'm getting this letter. I thought we had taken care of this. And then she had sent me a video of all the supply and the inventory up at Central, and she had said that all the schools had the product. And I said, okay, but then we actually have Family Law and Rights here. They actually wrote another letter because they had been calling around to some of the schools. They're saying Price Elementary, Jose Rios, JFK High School, Southern High School are lacking the products. But to be fair, when I got this letter, before the hearing, I called Mrs. Quinata again, and she had told me that no, she was positive these schools had the inventory, they had the supply. She had, in some cases even personally delivered the products. So I don't know who's saying what or what's factual, but I'm about to head out to these schools myself on Friday to see for myself. But if you don't mind, could you ensure that all the schools in the district that are eligible or qualify for the placing of these products are placed at the schools, and secondly, to be sure that no one is paying for these products, because this organization had told me in this letter that they had heard that some students were being charged 50 cents for a pad. And so I'd appreciate it. Well, if you have any input to provide on this information now, I'd appreciate that. But if you don't, I appreciate a very thorough follow-up on this issue. So I don't have to get another letter, and we can get this stuff out where it's needed, right, to the school community. Did you have any information?
Yes, Senator. I actually was talking to Auntie Juliet, and she even showed me the video he sent you. But definitely something I would go out, and I would visit the schools and even check on that too. She's confirmed that everything was sent out, and there was no charge for anybody regarding pads or any feminine necessities that they need. So definitely, I will still go out. Especially, I saw the list already, and I was talking to the Famaguan group. So I want to find out also. But if that's happening, we'll get a stop to it and definitely get those items out to them.
Yeah, I hope it's not happening though, because it's supposed to be free.
Right.
Yeah, and widely available.
Funded.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I have your commitment on that.
We can go together.
Okay.
We are spending $25,000 a quarter for those materials and providing them at no cost to the students. So something's not right here for sure.
Well, I hope you get to the
We'll
bottom
check
of it.
and find out what it
Thank you.
is.
Thank you. Anything further, Senator Taitague, Senator Brown? No? Okay. Anything further?
Thank you. Stay tuned. We have all of the pieces moving now, and we're going to see more and more things happen. We will be announcing the date for the State of the Schools address. It'll be sometime this month. I'd hoped to do it Monday, but other things have pressed my schedule so that I can't do it on Monday. But it will be public by invitation and also streamed live.
Thank you, Superintendent. Then it's also my intention, I'm looking for a date later this month. As you know, because of the storm, we had to postpone our special education hearing. But that's another issue that I'm constantly slammed with concerns and comments and complaints. And so I'm not sure if there was a conference this month, but of course I'll plan the hearing around whatever date.
Yeah, he's at a conference right now this week.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Okay, so it's great to meet your new management team. Best of luck to you and get to work, and thank you so much. And if there's no further testimony, this concludes today's oversight hearing. The committee will continue to accept. Wait, is there any public comment? I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Okay, so there's nothing further. We'll continue to accept any written statement on this oversight within 10 business days from today. And of course, you can drop that off the second floor of the Guam Congress building here at 163 Challenge Santa Papa, Nagatnia, or you can send it to our email, malafunction@guamlegislature.org. That's MALAFUNKSHUN at guamlegislature.org. Thank you all for your participation. This oversight hearing is adjourned at 7:20 Chamorro Standard Time. Guam Senador Chris Malafunction Barnett está. Adios.